Hey everyone, it's Mariana, and I am back with another Game of Thrones episode recap and review. As always, these videos are not spoiler free, so make sure you're caught up on the show before watching any further. So Season 6, Episode 8, No One. I have to say, this was not one of my favorite episodes, and I have a feeling that there are quite a few people out there who are a bit disappointed by it. Of course, this is taking into account the really high standards set by Game of Thrones in the past, and what can be considered a not so good episode for Game of Thrones could be one of the best episodes for many other TV shows. But we do hold Game of Thrones to a higher standard, so it's hard not to feel a bit disappointed when the writing isn't as great as what we're used to. So let's talk about all of it, the good and the not so good in this episode. First up, at Braavos, we see Lady Crane deliver her monologue a bit differently this time, adding the bit about the vengeance that Arya suggested, and it is much more effective. After she's done, she goes backstage and she finds Arya bleeding. Sorry, none of the elaborate theories that fans had panned out. Arya was just being an idiot and gallivanting in the middle of the day. I can't say I ever thought the show would go for a complex twist here, and if you remember my last video, I said that I thought it was the real Arya who got stabbed, but I did think there was more to the story here, and it turns out she was just being dumb, and it seemed so out of character for her. She is smarter than this. She's training to be an assassin in this special group who is meant to be in and out invisible. She has fooled people before, even prior to her training as an assassin, and she should have known the waif would be after her, or at least somebody from the House of Black and White would be after her, because she has gone rogue. So it just seems really silly, and I am really surprised that it is just because she was for some reason careless. Come on now. Anyway, Lady Crane apparently has some crazy skills patching people up, so she patches Arya up and she invites her to join the theater company and to come with them to Pentos, because there's really nothing for Arya here, according to Lady Crane, but Arya refuses because we all know she has a different goal. Soon, the waif shows up and she murders Lady Crane terribly, of course, and she wants to finish off Arya. Now, I'm not sure how much time has passed between Arya getting patched up and the waif showing up, but it does not seem like it's been a long time. For some reason, though, Arya is able to jump and run around the streets, and I get it, adrenaline and everything, but with her injuries, it is still pretty insane the things that she can do, and abdominal wounds are no joke, so that was interesting. However, the tumble down the stairs finally makes her bleed, and after that she leads the waif to where she has been hiding, and she kills the candle with needle, and she is able to defeat the waif in the dark. Later, at the House of Black and White, Sexy Jesus follows the trail of blood to the well and then to the fresh face of the waif in the hall, and Arya is there. Finally, a girl is no one, he says, but Arya responds with, "A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I am going home." That's very exciting. I've been waiting for this to happen, and even Sexy Jesus looked like he was a bit proud of her in that moment. Now, here's the thing. It seems like the show's writers could not decide if they wanted to scare the audience by having Arya severely injured and in danger of dying, or if they wanted her to be a badass and finally stand up to the waif. So they decided to do both, apparently, and with the little time in between those two events, it just didn't make a lot of sense. And on top of that, they robbed us of actually seeing her defeat the waif, which I think a lot of people were looking forward to. So even though I'm excited as far as where she's going from here and as far as her not being part of the Faceless Men anymore, I think the storyline and the writing for her storyline definitely took a hit, and I do think they could have done this better and in a way that made sense. Next up, somewhere in the forest, a few guys from the Brotherhood are sitting down around the fire, but the Hound shows up and chops them all up. Despite this being a pretty violent scene, it ended up being actually hilarious for the most part, just because the Hound even calls them out on how pathetic they are and how they can't even die right. It was pretty enjoyable, I'm not going to lie. Later, the Hound finds more men from the Brotherhood, including Lem Lemoncloak, whom he was actually looking for, but also Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion, and they are hanging people. So many hangings this season. That scene was also pretty entertaining because the Hound wants to chop these guys up as well because he is pissed, but Beric and Thoros would not let him. They just want these guys to hang. It was pretty funny. Dark humor here. Later, Beric and Thoros try to convince him to stay with the Brotherhood and to go north with them because there are bigger problems there, and we know this is actually true. And the Hound doesn't seem to be very interested in this at first. He tries to decline, but by the end of the scene, he's actually more convinced. Two things here. First of all, they are clearly trying to kill our hopes for Lady Stoneheart by showing us Beric Dondarrion being still alive, unless they want to later show us him giving her the final kiss, which it's been so long at this point that I feel like if she's not already around somewhere, it's too late for that. They could always change the process, of course, but I don't know, this was a big thing that kind of took a stab at that theory, and there is a small hope. I still have a small hope that she will show up in the finale, but I don't know, guys. Beric Dondarrion being alive, not a good sign. Second, it does seem like the Hound is going to be heading north with the Brotherhood, and that, along with something else that happens in this episode at King's Landing, really shatters everybody's hopes for Clegane Bowl, at least for now. And I think this is actually a good thing, because it really doesn't make sense for the Hound to go right back to King's Landing and to get right back into that mess after everything that happened. I think he could be much more useful in the north. Plus, with Arya heading there, there's definitely a chance for a reunion. At Meereen, the Red Priestesses are working their PR magic, and it seems to be going well. We also find out that Varys is actually going back to Westeros to look for friends and ships. Does that mean we can actually see the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons on screen? Maybe even a White Raven? This is really exciting to me. I have been really sad that they separated Varys from Westeros and it didn't look like they were going that way, but with him coming back, I think it's definitely a possibility, and I would love to see that. Later, we get yet another scene with Tyrion, Missandei, and Grey Worm having an awkward conversation, and this time Tyrion wants to make them drink wine and tell jokes. Just when they start having fun though, the Masters show up on ships and start attacking Meereen. Grey Worm wants them to stay in the pyramid and he wants them to try to fight off the attackers from there, but then Daenerys shows up. And that's it. Really abrupt ending to that scene. Daenerys ex machina. They just need to get Daenerys, Tyrion, and the dragons to Westeros because this whole storyline is weird and it's not very well paced, and it is wasting Tyrion as a character, and he's one of the best characters on the show. Come on, let's get this going. At King's Landing, Qyburn lets Cersei know the sparrows are outside and they want to talk to her. She goes down and talks to them, and they tell her that the High Sparrow wants to meet her at the Sept of Baelor, to which she pretty much says if he wants to talk to her, he can come see her at the Red Keep. This was one of my favorite scenes out of the entire episode, and the whole bit with I choose violence was just great because one of the sparrows tries to attack the mountain and he pretty much destroys him. Yeah, I kind of wish that there were more people involved in this, and I wish she got through more of the sparrows because that was just so satisfying. These guys are so annoying at this point. But maybe next time. She finishes off by saying, "Please tell His High Holiness he's always welcome to visit." Later, there is a royal announcement to be made in the throne room, which immediately sounds like it's going to be bad news for somebody, and it ends up being bad news for Cersei. First of all, Tommen announces that the date of Loras's and Cersei's trials is selected, but more importantly, he announces that trial by combat is now forbidden, which is definitely not good for Cersei. She was counting on it, and now she really needs a new plan. Also, Qyburn mentions a rumor he has been investigating, and apparently it's much more than a rumor. We don't really know what's going on there, but suddenly my joke that I made last time about Cersei burning the whole place down with wildfire seems like an actual possibility. What do you guys think? Lastly, at Riverrun, Brienne and Pod show up to talk to the Blackfish. We finally get the Brienne and Jaime reunion. Was it satisfying? Kind of, but it didn't last too long, unfortunately. Pod and Bronn have a scene together that's kind of the comic relief of the episode, more typical comic relief of the episode, while Brienne tries to bring out the best in Jaime. "You're a knight, Sir Jaime. I know there is honor in you," she tells him. She wants him to do what's right, and there's this whole thing with Brienne trying to make a deal. She wants to convince the Blackfish to lead his men north to help Sansa and to let Jaime take Riverrun without spilling any blood. But of course, the Blackfish isn't going to do that. He's not going to leave his home. After this, Jaime and Edmure have a talk. Baby catapulting is mentioned, which is right from the books. I bet the people who haven't read the books were really confused by this really violent statement from Jaime, but for book readers, it was kind of a nice callback. Jaime does his best to persuade Edmure to do what he wants him to do, and we also hear him repeat that line that he said in the very first episode of Game of Thrones, "The things I do for love." It is quite frustrating to see Jaime still so in love with Cersei and so loyal to Cersei. So much for character development. I was really hoping for some much needed character development from the books, but he even says, "If I have to slaughter every Tully who ever lived to get back to her, that's what I'll do." They may still go there, but it's not looking good right now, especially with Brienne and Pod escaping. They do follow the books when it comes to Edmure showing up at the gates of Riverrun as per Jaime's orders. He wants to be let in, and of course, even though the Blackfish is warning these people not to let him in, they want to obey Lord Edmure's orders, so they let him in, and as soon as he's in, he orders his men to lay down their arms and to let in the Lannister army. Worst idea ever. While all of this is happening, Brienne and Pod end up escaping in a boat, and the Blackfish decides to stay. According to the Lannister men, he dies fighting for some reason off screen. I don't know why. The only explanation I have is maybe he didn't die, and this kind of depends on whether or not they decide to follow the books. But if he is dead, it was a missed opportunity to have this character have a pretty epic exit, and everybody liked Blackfish, especially after episode 7, so I don't know why they decided to do it that way unless he's alive. So far, it sounds like we were robbed of two epic fights that everybody would love to see, one with Arya and one with the Blackfish. Overall, as I mentioned, I'm not particularly thrilled by this episode, and I think the writing really wasn't the best as far as Game of Thrones goes. It is very surprising to see episode 8 to be less exciting and less interesting than episode 7, at least from my perspective. That's how it was. I definitely enjoyed episode 7 way more. Of course, there were some fun things here here as well, and I talked about those, but I really need them to step it up for the last 2 episodes of the season. That's it for my recap and review of Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 8, No One. Let me know what you thought of this episode. What was your favorite part? Mine, like I said, was definitely the whole Cersei thing with I choose violence. That was definitely the most entertaining part to me, although I did really enjoy the Hound stuff as well. Let me know what your least favorite things were. How does this episode rank with the other episodes this season? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you did enjoy it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Please share it with your friends and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye!